Hey guys, Nozilla back again. This episode, we're going to take a look at the interior of the 1,000 horsepower Pandem R32 Skyline. Hey guys, back again. Sitting inside the car in the cold garage. It's the middle of February. Not too much you can do right now in New York State. Things are starting to thaw out a little bit, so hopefully soon we'll have some nice weather again. We can get this thing out. But I figured we would do another kind of walkthrough of the car, and this time trying to focus on the interior. This is kind of an area that hasn't really been touched on that much on Facebook or Instagram, so I figured why not. Got some upgrades coming on the way, so I figured it'd be kind of a cool thing to document everything that's in the car right now. I'm sitting in these Sparco ADV Pros, or Pro ADVs. These are a full race seat with the halo support on the top there. Great seat, very comfortable for a race seat. I do have a little lumbar support cushion in the back. Old guy problems, you know. These are a side mount seat, so they do have you know, brackets for the side. I'm currently running the Street Faction rails and the seat mounts. And I'm probably going to be doing some modification to the mounts themselves, because I'm a tall dude. I want to see if I can get these things to sit a little bit lower for optimal placement. Give me a little more clearance from the top of the car with the helmet on. So that's going to be hopefully another winter project at some point. But I did kind of, if anybody's, you know, like a tall guy, a big guy, I did do a little bit of research on, you know, off the shelf seat mounts, and I found that the Street Faction give the best result and the most options for getting a seat low. I did try the Planteds, I did try the Sparcos, I tried the Buddy Club Super Lows. Nothing came close so far to the Street Faction mounts, so I would highly recommend them if you're trying to get extra clearance off the top of the car. So from that, I do have a new carpet in the car, which is going to be coming out when we get this thing ready to go for the track and everything. But that was ordered, I believe, through Terra Firma. It was a replacement carpet. A couple things about that. It was a nice piece. It's not exactly OEM. The fitment was okay. It did not come with the little plastic guides that help mount it onto the you know, the door rails. So that was a little frustrating. We found some workarounds for it. Back down near the you know, the footwells, I have another Street Faction part that I'm running, which is the you know, their sheet metal kick plates, or heel plates, I guess you'd call them. I found these to be actually quite comfortable, and they help kind of get your feet into a more comfortable position for managing the pedals, at least in the OEM location. So they're also, you know, pretty easy to install. They look nice. Just don't drop anything inside the holes in them, otherwise you're not going to get it back. So that was kind of a cool upgrade. Biggest probably upgrade inside the interior is the AGI Precision roll cage. This is their national spec, their rally spec cage. It's rated for, you know, national events. This thing is absolutely ridiculous as far as, you know, bolt-in cages go. Down the line, depending on how things go, we might pull this thing out and sell it and do a full, you know, weld-in cage, which it's looking more and more like that's going to happen. But this cage is absolutely awesome. So many very, very nice features about it, and also definitely not like the most ideal thing for a street car if you're going to put a cage in a street car. Number one being, obviously, cages are very unsafe when you're driving in a street car, because when you're driving a car on the street, generally you're not wearing protective equipment. specifically a helmet. So as you can imagine, if you were to get into an accident with a roll cage in your car on the street, first thing that's going to happen is your head is going to bash into one of the bars, and you're not going to have a good day. Potentially not have any more days. So that's one thing you definitely want to watch out if you're putting the cages into street cars. I do drive this car occasionally on the street, but not very often. So I did, I shouldn't say I did, but one of the advantages to running the halo protection on the seats, on these race seats, is that when you're strapped in, whether you're wearing a helmet or not, you're locked into the seat, and if you were to get into an accident, your head's going to go into the halo on the seat rather than, you know, a steel bar in the roll cage. So it does provide a little bit of kind of extra padding, protection. So that's there. Moving along, obviously I've talked about it many times before. I'm running the T56 Magnum F gearbox in the car. It's a 6-speed. This was converted, you know, through using a kit for the R32 chassis. And I do have this S1 Sequential shifter mounted to that right now, which changes the you know, your H pattern style shifting to a sequential style. Been very happy with this setup. It is getting replaced again. If you watch my other videos, you know that there's something else on the way. That's going to be a Samsonus 6-speed sequential dog box, and that's going to get wired into the Haltech 2500 Elite, so we can do flat foot shifting, you know, blip throttles on downshifts, and do, you know, boost by gear and all sorts of nice cool things that are going to be coming with that. So hopefully, you know, within the next few weeks we should hear about, you know, the progress of that, and have that shipped out and installed before the spring would be fantastic. But anyways, as it sits right here, here's the S1 shifter. This thing is definitely a really kind of a game changer for a street car, I think, and even for the track. I'm sure it'd be great. But I'm running the GK Tech, you know, billet aluminum, like gigantic shift knob on this thing, which I found helped, you know, with momentum on the shifts, because there is a bit of throw back and forth of this to engage, you know, to the next gear, much more so than you'd have like on a traditional dog box. Hooked up to this, I have you know, a gear selection sensor, and that's wired into the Haltech Elite, which I then display on the IC7 Dash. And I also have an external display over here on this carbon fiber radio delete plate, and that shows the gear, including, you know, reverse and everything. I got a number of switches on here. 3 of these are to be wired in. This just kind of set in place right now. One of them off to the right here is my my ignition switch. So I'm sure things will be changing here in the future, but for right now, we did turn this thing over into, you know, push to start. So as it stands right now, you still need to use the key to unlock the steering wheel and unlock the ignition circuit, essentially. Since it's still being driven on the street, I decided this was the best way to do it. And then after that, you flip your switch, you have ignition power in the car, and then you can hit the engine start, and that'll, you know, start up the engine, of course. So the radio surround, actually, the one that I had in the car before, I'm sure you guys know these things are notorious. Well, they're 30-year-old plastic, but they're notorious for cracking and kind of, you know, bad places, like right on the top or on the bottom, you know, around like the shift boot area. So I actually bought a remake replacement for this, made by Muse Design in Japan. A little bit pricey, but I gotta say, I mean, like the quality is fantastic, and it's made out of like a stronger, what I consider to be a stronger material than OEM. And it's a bit thicker in more critical spots, and I think this thing is going to last quite some time if it ends up staying in the car. I also made a nice little kind of carbon fiber block off plate, I guess you'd call it, since this shifter doesn't really move. There's no need for a boot or anything, so I made that down there with the OEM, you know, shift boot ring. Moving along to the doors, I've removed the OEM door panels on the inside, and obviously you know that the doors themselves are the S1 carbon fiber doors, but the insides are actually the BR carbon fiber door panels. These I got from Right Hand Drive Japan. Prices are okay. The panels are nice. They're not what I would consider to be like the best carbon fiber quality part that I've ever seen, but they're decent. They come kind of like pre-etched for the cutting points that you need to cut into to mount your your window switches and things like that. I opted to just say, you know what, let's just keep the door handles and everything else will relocate so that you'll have a much cleaner look. And I thought it would be kind of neat to put the window switches in the center console right here so that they could be easily accessed, you know, by either, you know, a driver if there was a passenger. And it kind of hides them in a spot, and it doesn't detract away from like the carbon, you know, the clean carbon look on the door panel. So I rewired all of the, you know, all of the wiring that was going inside the doors that was removed, and I ran fresh wires to the window motors on both sides, to new relays, and then to these switches here. So you can see, I'm not sure if you can hear that, but we got windows going up and down. So kind of just an interesting thing that I did there. I did pick up this little top secret carbon fiber dash trim. Just why not, you know? Just kind of a cool little cosmetic piece. Nice piece. Again, Right Hand Drive Japan. That is probably going to be going on the chopping block shortly, as there's something else coming along that's going to require no need for that anymore. We did install this rather large, kind of like full-length rear view mirror. Since I'm running the smaller, I guess they're the Garage Active Group B mirrors on the car, and they're a little bit on the smaller side, you know, for being able to see what's going on, you know, and behind you. So I decided to get this bigger mirror here, especially driving on the street. It gives me a much better, you know, idea of what's going on in my blind spots, which helps quite a bit when you're driving on the street and on the track when you can't really turn your head too much. If you're wearing a helmet, I mean, obviously you can't see more than a certain angle to your left. And on the street, you run into similar issues. Especially right now, there's no passenger seat in the car, but when there's a passenger seat, the blind spot becomes even worse. You know, moving along to the driver's side here, I have a new, you know, e-brake boot that I got. I'm still running the OEM e-brake, but I did buy the GK Tech aluminum, you know, the billet aluminum handle and their drift button. So I basically use that just as a parking brake right now. So it's still like a cable style parking brake. And then for the actual e-brake, you know, for hydraulic, you know, I have a hydraulic setup, the GK Tech external hydraulic setup here. And that goes to a dual caliper rear, which runs off the GK Tech rear drop knuckles. Definitely a very clean setup. I have a little adapter plate that actually bolts onto the OEM kind of like shift boot trim down on the chassis, and that plate slides right out underneath the radio trim, bezel trim here, and then allows me to mount this, which, I mean, it turned out really cool. I got a little fire suppression system in the car. I'm still working on the install. It kind of got put on a back burner with everything else that was going on in the car over the summer. But I have my my lever mounted here, or a pull lever, and then that basically actuates a cable which opens up the you know, the fire suppression bottle in the rear, and then there will be ultimately 3 lines. One right now which is already plumbed to the trunk, another which will be, you know, plumbed probably near the driver side over here, and then the third going into the engine bay, so that all the critical areas are covered in the case of a really, you know, catastrophic event. And I'll also be running a separate, you know, handheld fire extinguisher as well, just something that I can grab quickly if there's an isolated incident. with electronics, Haltech Elite 2500, wired up into kind of like a custom mount on my firewall in the passenger footwell. And I have, you know, the relay box, and I have a, you know, custom kind of 12-volt box that I created up there to carry, you know, my main power from the battery, and then that gets distributed to the Haltech and other things. And then also it goes to another box, which then sends separate lines into the engine bay, so that we can have full, you know, 0 or 2 gauge wire going to the alternator and the starter, making sure everything has exactly what it needs. And then that, you know, I have, you know, the CAN devices set up down there with a little CAN expansion box. One of it, which is wired into the Haltech IC7 Dash, which sits in the Mako R32 recessed version of their dash mount. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's one of the coolest, cleanest looking installs that you can possibly do. It sits back in, there's no issues with glare. The IC7 is incredibly bright screen, obviously dimmable and adjustable brightness. Really, really cool setup when you're running a Haltech or something else. Inside the dash, or behind the dash rather, is my relocated, you know, chassis fuse box. So all the wiring for the fuse boxes and everything was taken out of the engine bay and brought inside, just to make sure that there's no electronics in the engine bay that don't have to be there, just to kind of clean everything up. And that itself will probably end up getting rewired at some point with a kind of like an aftermarket fuse box, but for right now it's still just a minified OEM box that's mounted back there. I have, if I can get her off, this is a Sparco. I think it's like a 410 or something like that. I mean, it's a very small steering wheel, and this is mostly because of clearance issues with the cage, making sure that like my hands aren't going to end up getting smacked into the cage, you know, making turns and stuff. We're running a OMP quick release, and this is the version that actually has the electronics built into it. So there's like a plug and pin set on the receiver and on the wheel, so that when you push it in, all the pins make contact, and then you can wire whatever you want externally through the wheel, and you don't have to deal with, you know, cables that are getting wrapped around every time you make turns and stuff. It's ended up being a very useful setup, and it looks good. It works great. The quick release it's solid. It's OMP, you know, so it's OMP. It's great quality. I've got 4 buttons on the wheel right now. The top 2 standard stuff, since it's street, you know, it's these are horns, and then the bottom 2. One is launch control, and then the other is rolling anti-lag. We're going to be playing with that some more, definitely when we get some nice weather, and that'll be kind of fun to share with you. I haven't really configured the rolling anti-lag, you know, to what it should be yet, but from what I've experienced so far, it's definitely a neat feature, kind of like a slingshot when you're already going like 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. More OMP stuff. I'm running like an OMP pedal set on a Nismo reinforced clutch bracket. That's kind of like something that I would always upgrade on any R32, is the clutch pedal bracket. They're known to fail, especially when you get an aftermarket clutch. Some of the older ones, or specifically the single disc clutches, they will stress out that pedal bracket quite a bit. And if you've ever seen it, you know that there's only like a handful of spot welds that are basically holding the thing on there. So take it out, add some more welds to it, reinforce it, or get the Nismo unit. Either way, do that for just kind of, you know, for you know, future precaution. This car is also one of the upgrades that we're going to be doing to it this winter. Hopefully will be a complete drive-by-wire conversion. So we have a 350Z pedal getting ready to go in, and we're making a billet adapter plate to move that over into the correct position, because if you're familiar, they are meant for a left-hand drive car, so they are offset to the left and on the right-hand drive, they almost touch, you know, your brake pedal. So you got to bring them over about, you know, about 2 inches or slightly under 2 inches or so. So it's in a comfortable position, or the correct position. So moving around to the back, we are running, you know, Sparco 6-point harnesses. These are the wider harnesses. The AGI cage actually comes with mounting points for them, and it gives you a harness bar that goes along the back here at the perfect height to come right through the Sparco seats. More Street Faction gear in the rears. I'm running their rear seat delete, which is very, very nice, impressive, clean piece. I was very happy with that. I've probably taken it in and out now about 2 or 3 times to do additional installations back there, and it's been a very nice, easy thing to work with. So I've been very happy with that. We have a Moroso AccuSump setup in the back as well. That is probably never going to see service, or maybe it might see a season. I'm not sure, because we have the dry sump setup that's going to be installed. If it doesn't end up getting installed this year, we'll run the AccuSump for a season. If not, then it'll end up on the chopping block as well. But that has that's been installed in the back, and it's got a you know, the pressure switch and also mechanical valve back there with a 10-in line that's routed underneath the car that comes back and runs to the engine bay. And then to the left, back there behind the driver's seat, is the you know, the fire suppression bottle. And I think besides that, I think that's pretty much everything in the interior. That can't think of anything else. All right, so I think the next thing that we'll cover will be probably like everything on the bottom of the chassis, and suspension, chassis stiffening components, more of the drivetrain, and the brakes. All right, guys, thanks for listening.